just know that it's your voice will be there online, but I think it's a safe.
Yeah.
Or good thing to say that it is going to be like that, but don't worry about it. So I think we're pretty much at 2:15. Welcome. We can start by always a short introduction. This is I don't know how many times you've actually visited this course or some other course, usually with always a different affiliation, or yeah, at least the third time and maybe the third affiliation. So Jarkko Moilanen moves around in the world and in Finland, and actually not just only kind of moves from between places, but actually switches jobs and probably has several jobs at the same time. And the most recent job, I think, what is definitely what got him here, which is the, how do you actually, API
NF or whatever.
Apinf.
Yeah, it's a difficult, I know.
Yeah, Apinf in Finnish, but maybe, I don't know what's that in English. API in Apinf.
Yeah.
Let's use the Finnish name. Apinf is a company, actually Tampere-based company, or origins from Tampere, but like a global movement. And what Jarkko is famous for, I think it's safe to say, is kind of starting up communities. So maybe you will mention some of the communities that you have been part of starting up, but that's definitely these things. So kind of moving in between organizations, jumping from an organization to another, and starting communities, starting up new things, starting on kind of processes that will kind of grow at best, take new people and then the community starts to run on its own. And this particular community that you are here to start up or maybe grow, I think it has started up already, is APIOps, and that will be the topic of the talk. So happy to have you here again, Jarkko.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that was pretty accurate. I'm not a community manager. I hate when it gets boring. So I'm a community midwife. I get things started. I come between of chaos and I create some kind of order, and then I hand it over and move to another thing. So I'm a grasshopper in a way. I never settle anywhere longer than 2-3 years, and then I jump off again. But again, I love communities. I've been taught, educated by communities, technical communities all my life. I don't have a technical background. My background is in the University of Tampere, and from there it was political science. But I'm a C64, Commodore 64 generation, so I get familiar with the computers when I was like 6 years old, and I got fond of the culture of computers and the people around the computers and doing new stuff and inventing new stuff. And eventually it resulted in a situation that 2009 I established the Tampere Hack Lab, Tampere Hackerspace, and now it contains like 300 people in there. They have own space and 3D printers, plasma cutters, woodwork, and everything else. So I love communities. And well, anyway, I have done some programming myself, but not seriously, just fiddling around with stuff. And so I'm not a technical expert, but I do understand the language of technical people. So I can mediate to, let's say, to business people. What are these people saying, these technical people, in fact? But anyway, as it was mentioned, the latest effort that I'm pushing now is the APIOps network or movement. We want to call it as a movement, so it will be a bigger one, not just a community. And we've taken the idea of DevOps actually. So how many of you know the word at least DevOps? A few. It's a development plus the operations in service development. So automation is the key word. So we've taken the dev away and put the API in front. So APIOps, and that's exactly what we're doing now, and trying to build a bigger community around this kind of topic. And today's story, yeah, this is the welcome part basically now going on. And then I'm gonna tell you short version of the APIOps community history. It's a story, actually, not just a few slides, but I'll tell you where it came from and what is it now and where it's going now, and what are the opportunities for you in concrete ways. And one of the important part of community work is that you actually give something to the community. And we started this kind of APIOps appreciation reward. And at the moment, it's a Amazon gift card, this time $50, and it's going to go to anyone who's the most active here. So it's going to be decided after the presentation who actually gets it, and let's see how do we actually pick the one who's the most active. The activity can also be in the online, so it's not just for this audience and only the physical side of it. So please use the hashtag APIOps or add the user account as well, APIOps there if you happen to be in Twitter. Be active, ask questions. This is for the discussion, not for a monologue. This is not a public dissertation thesis, and let's keep it so. Those are different kind of events. So this is community stuff. Raise your hand if you have something you disagree or you want to say something. Let's go ahead. And then again, we'll have a bonus presentation coming from Nasia about the UX design, and that's somehow related to API work, API management. And let's hear what she has to say after my presentation at some point. Possibly there's a break point when we switch the presentation. So that's your chance to get rid of here, leave the premises, or then go to the toilet and come back. All right. That was a brief introduction about me, and here's my mysterious Twitter account if you want to follow me. And our organization for a company is for the community, it's apins.org. And in this context, my expertise is the developer experience, API value chain, and APIOps, naturally. I'm really enthusiastic in developer experience and trying to understand what it actually means in API economy, and what's the difference to normal, so to say, normal developer experience, and how do you actually make APIs most easily to approach and to adopt and to learn. That's what the developer experience is about. But then again, I'm interested about the value chains, because that's where the money actually comes from. That's where the automation comes into hand. You want to make things automated as much as possible. And the automation is the key part of the APIOps community. I've tried to make a sort of simple, some kind of value promise for the APIOps community, and this is what it is now. So APIOps is about building standardized API value chain automation with the community for the community. And the latter part is referring to actually doing it together, mostly open source, and giving you back when you give us something. But anyway, standardized API value chain automation is the big effort that we actually want to do. We already started 2015, and these are the guys who actually started the APIOps already 2015. There's one guy missing, but we had to switch places who's going to take the picture, and we didn't have any additional persons in the building. So this one is a different person in different photograph, but let's not that be in a way. But there's a few people in Tampere who actually decided that, yeah, let's build this APIOps community, and then we started to think, well, what is the actual content of it? We came up with the name first, and then we decided, what is this going to be about? And at that point, the company Apin actually was initiated as a project. So these guys decided to try, can we actually build a new kind of API management? Because we're not satisfied with the options that we have at the market. And we started out an experiment, and eventually it came to a company. Here's our CEO, by the way. We tried to make him unemployed so that he can go fishing or something, and we as a team handle all the stuff. Anyway, 2015, 2016 was sort of quite slow for us. We had around 70 members in the community, so a bunch of people. But we did manage to organize 2-day-long API days Nordic event in Tampere, and we had around 150 participants around the world participating in the event. It was in the city center, University of Tampere, provided the facilities for it, but we brought the content. So that was a big effort for the 70 people who were involved at that point. And then by the turn of the year, 2017, in January, the company that I represent started to made the decision to actually put resources to build the actual APIOps network. And eventually that was the moment that we started to grow as a network. And now we have around 200 members. And we have 3 groups, well, 2.5. Tampere and Helsinki are active ones, and the Budapest it's ripe. Yes, there was I put it outside one night on Saturday or Sunday, and there was like 40 people immediately there. And I announced first meetup without a date, and there's 8 or 9 people already there. So it's there. We just have to go there and start it. So there's enough interest for this kind of efforts around the world already. And this should give you the signal that we're not gonna stay here in Finland, but we're gonna go abroad pretty fast and grow it a bigger one. And to actually that's the first platform we joined up with, and we have a joint plan that wherever is demo location, there's gonna be APIOps. So 19 locations where the demo is now, there will be APIOps network local group. 2017, 2018. Let's see how fast we actually can grow. And we're not going to stop there, but when we have, let's say, 20, 21, 22 groups, global groups in the world, the snowball effect will hopefully come, and then they start rolling and establish a group their own. But we will push the growth of this network together with Demo. And as I mentioned, one of the current modes of APIOps appreciation is the Amazon gift cards. And as I mentioned, today is going to be given to some active participants since we don't have community speakers here. But whenever someone is speaking at the APIOps event, they will get a gift card for Amazon. It can be Heroku, it can be something else. We can decide as a community what kind of gift cards or some kind of other forms of appreciation we can actually give for the community. But anyway, now it's going to be the Amazon because I bought it already. So no more discussion about different kind of gift cards at the moment. But as far as I know, you can use it for example, the Amazon Web Services and also buy a book for your wife or your kids or whatever you want to do. It's pretty useful. Let's see. And we have established a blog in Medium, so medium.com/APIOps. There's a few blog posts now, but you're free to join us if you have a topic about APIs and you want to tell it to the world. Make an account to Medium, and then let me know, and I'll add you as a writer in the community. So you can actually blog your stuff over there if you want. We would love to see people blogging in the community as well. And let's see if there would be some kind of appreciation mode also for this kind of efforts. Let's see. What I want to see in the community is that instead of saying can't be done, we say let's try. So it's about experimentations. It's about going beyond the borders and explore the world of APIs and API networks and API value chains. So it's an experimentation network actually. And the community is there to mediate information, knowledge, and even resources. And what I want to actually see eventually is the Boston dynamics of APIs. This community should be something really on the edge. Be something bold. Don't think as small, but try to think big right away. And so no, I don't want to see any conventional boring solutions. I want to see some kind of bold ideas what you actually could do if you had the resources, if you had all the things that you actually need. And it's up to us to actually, as a community, to find you the resources to do it and do an experimentation, which eventually might become even global standard for doing some kind of a part of the value chain in APIs. So dynamics and automation is what I'm actually looking for. You might disagree, and I would love to hear opinions as well. So the ideas for the APIOps concrete aims come from the community, but the community also includes the companies that are involved at some point, constantly or occasionally, or during the meetups or somewhere else. But anyway, we need ideas, and we as a community will start to find resources, how to make an experimentation on your idea, how to make it real and see if it actually is profitable, if it makes sense, if it helps you automate, whatever. And we seek out the partners for you, and the more we get traction to the community, the more we get the companies involved, and companies have the resources, and they have the interest to actually to explore new opportunities, because those might become the big golden nuggets that they actually make a lot of profit eventually. And I would love to see mostly open source driven effort, so that this is not a startup incubator for whatever closed source solutions you want to build, but make it openly with the community and for the community. I mean, you can select your approach. How do you actually come to the API world itself? This is a stupid question, but I want to activate you. What is this? Yeah, it's a metro map. That's accurate enough. Even the location is not important, but yeah, as it says, there's Athens International Airport and everything. It's there. So why do I speak about subway networks or subway lines in APIs? Is the idea that there's this bigger evangelist of APIs, or more better known and more experienced evangelist called Kin Lane. And he uses this analogy of subway maps and subway lines about API value chains. So each of these stations is a piece of something that has to be done with software or manually by people. And each of these lines is a value chain. Simple as that. So he's been working this kind of map and lines that actually the companies and even developers go through when they work with the APIs. And so these tools might be existing already in the markets. Some of them are not there yet. We as a community can start implementing those, trying out those, what it could be actually. And then the more important part, or the additional part, is the automation between the stations. So we would be building API value chain subways or lines or carriages. So there's two parts: implementing some of the tools that are still missing in the value chains, and then building the automation between the parts. That's one way to actually approach the whole idea of API economy, and trying to see the bigger picture and think through there. The other way is to think about the journeys. Developers have different kind of journeys they go through, and then there's the API owner's journey as well, that you have to think about what happens before they actually come to your API, and how do you actually make them interested about your API. How do you make them actually return to your API, and how do you actually make them to blog about your API, and so on. So it's it's a one opportunity to actually take this kind of approach. To think this is not actual API developer or API owner journey. This is strictly taken out of the web. This is customer journey. But it's a again, I'm stealing something and trying to fit it in here. And I leave it up to you actually fill in what this actually say, all the texts here. We haven't done that. In our company, we're building this now. So we're taking this kind of approach at the moment. And then there's the technical approach, the latest hype world or hype concept, or whatever you want to call it, the serverless approach, using the Lambda functions and so on. So you actually, that's different kind of APIs or different kind of purposes and different kind of architecture fitting better in different situations. But this, I took it as an example because we are in a technical university. So this is the technical approach of it. You can always come from there as well, instead of thinking the customer itself or the values of the API value chains or anything. You can pick technical approach as well. It's up to you actually where do you actually come from. But these three directions are pretty obvious. But what actually combines them, what's the similarity? It's the automation and the value chains anyway. They somehow touch those two components anyway. And this is what the APIOps is about: the value chains and the automation in between the components. Does it make sense? Good, good. All right, then for the practical part, or something that was the background of everything. So a few examples of a few ongoing experiments that's going on now. It could be eventually, it could be something like injecting something on a tomato, but this is more digital that we're doing now. One of the ideas, this is ideal level of experimentation. It hasn't been even tested anywhere or anything other than I've been talking to developers and some business owners about this kind of idea that so far the developer experience is always the same for every goddamn API, or it at least should be. Same kind of elements in same order and whatever you want to call it. All these assume that developers are learning your API similar way, similar style, and similar order in the elements. But in reality, people learn with different styles and different orders. So what if we could actually build an adaptive developer experience? A system would actually learn how the developer wants to learn the new API. And we would gather a profile, a learning profile about the developer. And when a new API is given to the developer, it would actually possibly show a 2-minute video before it's showing any documentation. Or it could throw out ready-made copy-paste code as first thing. Some people want to jump into the code and then go see something else. But we should know how this developer wants to learn the API and make it as fast and as painlessly as possible. And this is why when it came to adaptive API developer experience, what if we apply the learning analytics as the first step? You want to know how people learn. You get information about that, and the next step is to put the AI behind it, artificial intelligence. Actually, and the third step is actually exporting the profile, developer profile, to another system, so that they don't have to start building the profiles from the scratch, but we can actually take it away. And this could be my data, for example. With the consent, I can give my profile to another system.
Is it some kind of A/B testing, or what is the method of learning in this type?
We haven't thought about it yet too much. It's more about, I was in the beginning, I was thinking like we get information, we could use the X API, which is used in the learning analytics systems now. And it's developer doing the blah, 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 this and that, and that's one line. And we get these lines more and more. And then there's a feedback loop at some point that they're asked, is this useful or not? Does this help you or not? And then we get the information, what they want to see actually, and possibly in what order. That would be the first step. And I have a suspect that this came to my mind because I came from the education sector. And we were starting there, the learning analytics stuff in the Finnish governmental level. So that's probably where it came to my mind as well. And I tested out this idea with a few academic people in the learning analytics and or in the education sector themselves. And so far they have all said that it makes sense. And the next step is actually do some kind of proof of concept and try it out. And then ask the developers, does this actually help you to actually learn faster the new APIs or not? And then we could go forward.
Is this a very generic problem that could be accompanied?
Well, yeah, obviously. But I haven't seen that yet in anywhere that someone would have applied learning analytics, for example, to learning APIs, or part of the, or even mention something like this as part of developer experience itself. So in a way, I see some kind of newness value in this anyway. I don't know, there might be something going on, but I haven't seen in the big conferences that I've visited anyone would have mentioned anything like this. But it's not, there's no big invention. We just have to test it out and see if there's any value actually. So before making big decisions about making a product out of it or something else. And there probably could be some kind of tutoring where, for example, the developer is somehow stuck with something. We should get an indication that, hey, normally this developer goes this and that fast, but now for some reason he stopped there. Then we could have a, let's say, chatbot or something that actually could ask them, do you actually need help? And we would help to cross the hard parts with either with the machine help or by manual people actually support people would actually engage with the developer at that point. And not to lose that developer, because if they get stuck with something and they can't get forward, they will ditch your API and they'll choose another one. And the aim is to actually help the API owners to be sure that their APIs are the most easy ones to learn and take into use. But that's the idea. I don't know, does it actually make sense, and if it's going to happen anytime, but let's see.
How is this like compete with Swagger or some kind of standardized basic documenting APIs that are actually good learning resources?
That's a good point. Swagger as one example of documentation and even design document and design-based document for APIs is a good starting point. And this is where the companies normally stop. We have a Swagger and it renders nice documentation and you can even try it out at some point and we're happy. This is only half of the story because developers want to see third-party evaluation or war stories about the API. Can I even trust this API? There's more in the developer experience than just the documentation where you can input and try it out. That's a good start. That's an excellent start. But it's not there yet, and it doesn't give you any kind of longevity feedback about the developers themselves. Again, yeah, good point. And there's, by the way, now that Swagger was mentioned, there's RAML and there's API Blueprint. So there's a lot of options, at least 3 options at the moment, serious options. But the Swagger is probably the most widely used at the moment. And the toolage for Swagger is excellent. All right, the next one, API Chatbot. This was sort of a bit mentioned there, but this is an idea that actually we as a company want to push forward as well. And we want to build a proof of concept of API Chatbot. And what it actually is the first idea that actually came from a API heavy user developer was that I'm working in a Slack environment and I want to learn how to use an API. and the API chatbot should actually help the developer to learn it in the Slack environment. So it would actually discuss API with the API management and API catalog to actually help the developer to find the API, and then it would help to actually show the developer how do you actually use it. But it would happen in the Slack environment instead of jumping to another website or somewhere else to learn it actually how you do it. But it would help you in the team environment itself. It's not easy. There's a lot of challenges, but that's another one thing that we actually want to try. And we have some kind of funding to actually get it started at some level, probably not even for the proof of concept level, but to get us a bit further, to make the next step. So we can use about 2,000 euros at this point for this. And if you're interested about this, to actually make some kind of contribution to push us a little further, even a few meters ahead, then come to me and let's make an arrangement with you.
Have you talked about these chatbots, for example, looking at the AI models who are doing chatbots?
No, I haven't had the chance yet to actually reach out. I'm using these opportunities to actually give out the ideas that we have now and seek out new possible partners to actually make it a real one.
Yes, I think they have the best tech in compared to the chatbots and the whole NLP processing problem. The whole task of teaching an API is a really complex one, and they are only solving customer service queries which can be parameterized and then handled. How do you? This is a really complex problem for 2,000 euros.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yes, as I said, we're not going to solve it with 2,000, but it's something that actually we can get some kind of contribution that we can go forward.
Yeah. If somebody solves this, it's going to be a $1 million business anyway for the whole analytics side of analyzing chat logs and doing that.
Yeah, I know. It's a big thing.
There is already an application that helps you with that, like where you actually have AI already and natural language processing already can teach your API, for example, based on the chat logs. There is that part of it.
It's definitely kind of exercise. What do you call it actually? We can always reduce the whole chat query to certain parameters. And not like true NLP systems that can.
What's the combination approach? But yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to do something with this idea, like even if it's just a small thing, like there's a REST API that you can use to create an API and just call it for something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem in this country is that everyone wants to make a $3 million project, and you never get the 3 millions, and you never get the project done. So my idea is to make a small step forward, at least go somewhere instead of just writing papers to Tekes or something else. I know, yeah, 2,000 isn't much. It's not even a month's salary for anyone, but. Yeah, exactly. We have something to show.
And also, yes, anyone who is taking the course already knows that the topic of the exercise work is you can select that freely, and the bot 3 points for bot development is out there, so that I would even call that more major than the 2,000 euros. But you can do the combo. So for that, you don't even, if you have that the notion of a bot, like saying something to a person on some queue, that's enough for the exercise work. That's more than enough, and maybe you can then teach the Jarkko for some summer funds to top it up.
Yeah, definitely. If it makes sense, then we as a company decide to put more resources to it. Then it will be in the prioritizement pipeline. But we have to start from somewhere. Let's see. But this feedback is valuable because not everyone understands the complexity of the topic that we're discussing here. But let's build something that we have a lot of smoke and a lot of mirrors and everything. But let's try it out at some level, and let's see where it actually goes. That's one idea. The third one is an ongoing project inside our company at the moment, openly, open sourced and everything else, and in the GitHub as well. But we're porting or moving our API management to the Raspberry Pi at the moment. It's a process. It's gonna take a few more months to actually get all the components that we want to have there. But it's something that we actually started because I wanted to build something about do-it-yourself home automation, and I was thinking, well, could I have some kind of value for having an API management there? And yeah, we're testing out, does it actually make sense to run it on Raspberry Pi or not? But anyway, it can be run there. We know that much already. But is it a powerful platform enough to actually have some kind of value? And what's the actual value? We'll see. But at this point, you can run the platform layer of the API management on Raspberry Pi by installing from the Docker. It requires a few commands if you don't have the Docker environment and everything in the Raspberry Pi, which isn't there by default, so you have to install it there. But it's still a few minutes task to actually get it up and running, the platform management layer, without the actual proxies below it. And that's the next step. We're going to put the EMQTT broker into the Raspberry Pi and then make it a configuration from the platform layer, so that actually you can have a, if not full IoT capability, but you have at least EMQTT broker, which you can use with the devices, and you can control those streams of information with the Appian platform itself. And the work actually is at the moment going on for the EMQTT broker, so it shouldn't take too long to actually be part of the release, which can be found from the APIOps/Appian anyway, from the GitHub, and you can run it yourself. And since I'm not a technical expert, and I was able to actually install the platform layer in Raspberry Pi without any kind of reruns, it went there by one effort. So the other technical people, you should be more skillful and everything else. So it's easy to install there now. And let's see where it actually goes. And we have a little discussions with the Tampere ICT company Futurize about trying out this environment in their office IoT environment. So let's see if that makes sense. So we're expanding in this area as well. But the focus of this effort is for the do-it-yourself home automation people to actually have some kind of API management in their system. Those are the three experimentations at the moment. And if you have an excellent idea, you're free to express it, for example, in blog. And if you need some resources, come to me and let's see if you can find a way. And but anyway, this is the opportunity for you to actually push your ideas to the community and get visibility and possibly even get a job by doing something in this community. Speaking of jobs, we have an opening at the moment. So if you're free and you fulfill all the requirements, you can start on Monday. We need a full stack JavaScript developer fast, and we will eventually need more, but at this moment we're ready to take immediately one, and probably in the summertime we'll take 2 or 3 more. But anyway, you should have some 3 to 5 years experience in developing and maintaining web applications, full stack JavaScript development. Meteor is an experience, but not a necessity. Bird's eye view, so not just fiddling with one-liners or anything, but you should have an understanding of architectures and everything else. You don't have to be fluent or most experienced with it, but you should understand, have some kind of interest towards bigger pictures. And since we are an API management company, you should have some kind of experience with the APIs. Mainly REST, but if it's EMQTT, that's fine. We are a multinational company. We have people from Brazil, India, Ukraine, and so on. So we have our language is always English. whatever we do is always English. So you should be pretty good at it. And normally strong analytical problem solving skills. But if you want a job and you want to come work right away, then contact me and let's see what happens. And if you have a friend that actually needs a job, let them know. Let them know about this opportunity. And I was even considering that I would even organize here some kind of headhunting by giving you or the one who actually gives the tip that actually leads to recruitment to have a, let's say, Amazon gift card or something else. But I left it out. So put out the word because we want this person to be in Tampere. So that's one of the requirements, has to be in Tampere because it's going to be part of the core team that actually is in Tampere. So we need coding power in Tampere site now. So before we go to that, questions, comments, anything? I know. I should have given you codes and blah, and give you some nice overview of ramping up the platform on Raspberry Pi Live here. But next time, when we have all the proxies and everything, then I'll show it to you.
You didn't mention anything about GraphQL. What should take in terms of
Oh well, it's an API. It's a GraphQL. Yeah, the question was about GraphQL and why it wasn't mentioned. Well, GraphQL is not going to make you any kind of use if your REST background isn't in a good shape. So you need to get your REST APIs and thinking on the solid ground before you even can go to the GraphQL itself. And I'm not sure yet is the GraphQL the next big hit. As there was that REST is going to kill SOAP. Well, it never did, but REST is the most used form of API at the moment. But what is going to be the next? And I'm not sure if it's GraphQL or not. It's there. I follow it, and I have no opinion about it yet. It makes use in some cases, in user interface cases at least. But does it have a wider use cases? I don't know.
maybe anyone here in the audience has experience with
GraphQL. Yeah, not there yet. Which brings me to another question. I think first of all, I really appreciate, and I'm sure many others that kind of appreciate the human-centered approach, if you will, of talk, because there's quite a few programmers that are starting their programming career. Let's see whether the career will be around programming or not, but still they're kind of early phase programmers. And there were some nice points about what to kind of learn. So, for example, the notion of REST, I think that's become obvious on base of the lectures as well. But like the deadline for first deadline for the exercise work is this Friday, as it happens. So, do you have any recommendations on which framework should one adopt as the first? Like the first framework to develop like web services, having this API development in mind. There are no silver bullets.
No, and it depends on your flavor of the programming language. So are you for Ruby or are you Python? Or are you Node.js? What are you? So it depends, and there's. If I say one, I'm gonna get 99 haters.
That's
So
what
I'm
I
not.
keep saying.
No, I'm not.
That's exactly what I keep saying, but the students still say like, give me one. I do appreciate that you have to start from somewhere. You had a yes.
Yeah, maybe one trend that I've seen happen recently that's more and more adopted in big companies is also microservices architecture. So instead of having one monolithic, you can go really up to microservices. So I would say that's definitely something.
As a startup, don't you think it's quite demanding
It's different. I mean,
It's different. Yes.
I wouldn't say it's hard to do or more easy to do than knowledge, but it's just a way of thinking. But in terms of language and framework, I totally agree with Jeff. I think if you want to be hip and cool and try the latest stable, then go for Node.js, probably React on top of it. You want to be hip and cool and try, I don't know, Phoenix or Go or Rust is apparently ramping up a lot. So
Very
kind of you don't want to be taking too much risk and be maturing, but Python, Django, or something. You really want to be able to go with Java or whatever else, C, all those. It really depends.
One recommendation, by the way, yeah, now that we discussed the tools, so for example, common approach might be that you want to go and you start implementing your APIs. You pick a framework and you use some kind of commands to actually give you a skeleton of API. And you do it, you design it on the way you go. Well, take a step back and learn Swagger first and make a design first for the API. And you see the documentation while you write the Swagger documentation. You see the result that actually is going for the developers who actually know nothing about your API. And you can actually show it to the developers before you implement anything. So you don't do in vain, and you don't do it from your brains only, but you can actually use the community to evaluate your API's functionality, parameters, authentication requirements. Is there enough examples that actually it is easy to approach? So this is you're building the developer experience from the scratch before you even touch the code. Try to figure out from the design first perspective.
API first.
Well, API first and design first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Afterwards, when you have the Swagger, you can actually generate the framework for the API and build the logic there. But before you go in there, you can actually test out the design for the API and everything with anyone. So no, I'm not gonna say take this Node.js, blah blah, whatever. I would actually, well, how I started, I picked the language that I was most familiar with, and then I chose some kind of, well, Stack Overflow people say that these are the top 3. Yeah, all right, let's pick that one, and let's start doing. And I didn't know about Swagger at that point, and then I found out, this makes more sense to me. And then I started doing everything from design first, then just fill in the code. So any other questions? Anything? No, people are in Facebook now.
Maybe just
Or Twitter, yeah.
One kind of asked me what was like the APIOps stuff or like community stuff, and what's actually what APIOps does. What's the kind of, as you were behind, what's the kind of company pitch there? How are you going to make the world better?
Yeah. I didn't even make a connection to APIOps and APIOps yet. APIOps network is a tool for us as well, because we're not selling the product and anything through the network, but actually we get the developer feedback about how well it behaves based on their needs. So it's a tool for us, and it makes sense for us to actually build a network and put 10 to 20% of our resources to building the network itself. So that's why we do it, and why one of the reasons why I was hired there, to actually make business and community development, because it was a business decision from the owners that actually we need to build a community. And I had started it already a few years ago, so they decided, yeah, let's get this guy here and let's let him handle it. That's the main reason of it. And we also, the Apinf product, the platform is fully open source, so it makes sense for us to go out again. And eventually we will get some kind of contributions more from the community, small patches for errors or fixing our bugs or finding more bugs from our system. And so it's a normal open source, building an open source community from our point of view, but in a larger scope, the APIOps can contain closed components, because you don't build the value chains with completely open source. That's naive at the moment. there are closed or commercialized software as a service components which are not open source. Well, our stuff is, but not the whole value chain that actually is involved in APIOps.
And I think that's one of the most difficult points in the whole API ecosystem currently, as we see from the case SAP, that what are you actually committing to when you are using somebody's API? So you might end up reviewing your whole project or products or your whole career because you ended up using some API case your licensing agreement without you even knowing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the most interesting problems with the whole API economy now. How do you actually tell what am I committing to when I'm using your APIs? As these APIs are also probably open everywhere on the web, and they have really nasty clauses for what they can actually demand from you when you're using the API. And this problem is something that seems to me to be of much interest because of the whole value chain. When you start building on top of some other API, you commit to that API, and then if something like that happens, then you're screwed.
Yeah. The big companies. I'm thinking, should I mention it or not? Well, yeah, Google. You know, Google Hangouts, which we are using at the moment. They closed the API from the public. You can't build any more tools on top of their Google Hangouts API. They use it only themselves and for partners, but the public one is closed.
Like Instagram.
Yeah, for example, yeah.
So if you're a social media analytics company and you sold your analytical capabilities to a number of companies, and then you promise that you will deliver every Instagram picture there is on their brand, and then you're not able to deliver that, what is your terms of service, how well is your agreement kind of in line with, so when your customers start complaining, so it's just a brand.
The internet is full of these cases that this is happening.
Yeah.
That would actually be interesting if you could somehow standardizing licensing agreements would be nice in itself. But then if you could automate that part to be included in your API.
Yeah, I think I actually know one Italian guy who is doing this automated bidding, probably related to IoT. Luigi Telesca is his name, if he's listening. Say hi Luigi. But he might be doing something like that, actually, this automated kind of negotiation. It's a bit different, but kind of.
That indeed raises a good question, what are the obligations, what kind of legal obligations, or just in general, user obligations of API owners? If I offer an API, Twitter actually did that, they offered their API, it was completely open implementation, a lot of people started building clients on it before they even had one. Then they needed to build themselves a client on top of it and promote that one, so they had to subcloud the other.
Yeah.
Putting limitations on their API.
Yes.
Which is not cool. So can we deal with those situations? I am an API owner, that
yeah.
Trust.
But if you start by full defense, you never get nobody using your API. Right. The other way. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and this is very far from developing a product, putting it into a box, and then putting it a price and selling it out and finding the easiest or the cheapest logistics. So there's so many things to do your bachelor thesis and master's thesis and PhD thesis on this topic. It's not. So I think that's the key takeaway for still. It's yeah, it has to do with technical stuff as well, but that's not the beef. It's nearly not the beef.
Yeah, and that's why the APIOps is about the technical stuff. But if you look at the blog post, for example, if you sneak behind the web to see what I've written, there's this idea of capitalist and APIOps. So capitalist, well, taken from capitalist, so you just remove the K or C, depending on language. The capitalist is the person who actually knows what is the product, how do you make money out of it, and what is the reason why we built an API. and how it relates to the legacy systems we have in our company, for example, and how do we make a transition to the API economy, because we have these mainframes here and we want to be in a microarchitecture at some point. And these guys actually know how do you make the transition, and they don't know about technology and they don't care about Docker. Is enough that they know that we run Docker, we aim to run Docker or something, that's fine. But they are the people with Excel minds, so they make the calculations, what makes sense, and how much it's going to cost us, and what's the actual return of invest and everything else. So those people think about the business logic before the APIOps people are even let loose. So there's always two roles, capitalist and APIOps, and we haven't found a sneaky way to inject the capitalist part here yet, but we'll start with the APIOps technical stuff, and let's see how it actually builds another layer on top of the APIOps itself. But anyway, we see that there's always two roles, and we're more discussing about the capitalist side now, not the technical difficulties or anything else, or the automation, but anything. But there's always two sides. Good point. And by the way, based on my experience for past 2.5 years, the big companies are now struggling with the APIs because they are making transition to the new model of architectures and new business models. And the engine or the reason for making these kind of changes is the business decisions and business opportunities, not the technical issues or technical solutions. Those are not the driving forces, but the need to have respond for different kind of opportunities in business-wise. That's the engine. That's the reason. And that's why the capitalist is so important to actually understand the role of capitalist. And the bigger companies are now starting from, they are building their APIs internally, connecting two systems, and learning by doing. It's inside their own company, hiding everything from publicity and everything else, getting the technical pieces together, but at the same time, learning, are we ready for APIs yet as a company? Do we have the enough skill set here? Do we need to hire someone? Do we need to have an capitalist? Do we need more DevOps people? What do we need actually to run API-driven architecture in the future? Then they make a decision to open up to the partner. So they pick a company that they want to expand their markets, for example, and they make a deal with the company, and then they open up a partner API. And the last step is the public API. But for the startups, it's the opposite way. They need to get their clients and users in, so they probably go pretty fast to open APIs and then go back to the closed ones. There's a different opinion now.
No, totally agree. But just follow up on that. So you talk about the APIOps and roles and actual roles. Like there should be job openings. We're hiring an APIOps.
No, it's like a DevOps. You don't hire. Well, some cases people put out that we're hiring DevOps, but I don't know. It's a way of thinking, a way of doing more than a title. So APIOps can be whatever technical expert background, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's the thinking that you actually think through the APIs. You're expert in the APIs-driven ecosystems and thinking. So that's the idea. And capitalist is the same. Business developer. I'm an capitalist, but I'm business developer by title. Expertise in API.
Now that I do remember, and we have the floor, or we have the shared space here, I just want to remind actually those that are taking the course, but why not, like everybody in the room, there's this API business lab taking place in a few weeks. Actually, Jarkko will be there as one instructor, let's say. So there is a kind of keystone company that has started the whole thing, and then they are bringing in a set of companies to edutech, and there will be workshops, 4 different workshops, I think, and they want to have some students there. And I've announced this opportunity for those taking the course, and I did mention that you need some programming expertise, and that's what I actually mean. So I know that you guys think, I mean, it may be that you kind of feel that you need another couple of 2 3 years under your belt before you want to start doing real stuff. But like wearing 2 big boots, it's a perfect excuse to learn stuff. So there are opportunities. Sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. And like jumping into big boots is a way to grow into the boots. So I would still kind of. I had one person mentioning that they are interested. But I think I have 4 or 5 slots. And it's not only folks taking this course, but I think we can kind of go beyond